Let's get some more analysis now from former executive manager, at Canada's spy agency, CSIS. Dan Stanton is with us. Hi, Mr. Stanton. Good to see you.
Hi, Vassy. Great to be here.
I really appreciate you making the time. I think there were a lot of suspicions about what had happened to lead to these firings. Do you think, first, the release of the documents, period, is a good thing?
Oh, I think it's a great thing. I think this is what we've been looking for: some transparency, not just throw the national security blanket over everything and say go away. There's nothing here. I mean, it's a bit shocking. It's a bit disappointing to know that protocols weren't followed, that some people didn't do their job, and that it's not a surprise. That's what China does. They commit espionage. They try to acquire things through clandestine means, and perhaps they achieved that here.
It was interesting, I thought, the way the minister was talking about a difference in perception of China and the threat they pose with respect to foreign interference. He sort of contrasted post-pandemic with pre-pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's post-pandemic. There's more of an awareness now that China, certainly through the foreign interference experience we've had, uses an all-society method to acquire what they want. And maybe pre-pandemic, there wasn't so much of a dialogue on it. There is such a thing as legitimate research. There is good university-level scientific research that goes on in good exchanges. But there are areas that there is a dual use. There is an application for their military, and we have to safeguard that. We have to safeguard these facilities, partly because we're obligated to internationally as well. We have all sorts of cooperative arrangements, and we can't have people from foreign states, particularly authoritarian ones, just waltzing around the facility and talking to people and getting to know things. These things have to be regulated and managed and controlled.
What is your, I guess, assessment of the threat level China poses? I take the point, from the minister that the level of awareness is perhaps different post-pandemic, but, we were still encountering the story with the two Michaels. There were a number of different adversarial actions by China. Like the intelligence community, I imagine, was pretty hyper aware to the fact that they might want some sensitive stuff from something like one of our top labs.
Yeah, I mean, this is China's business. They do this. They do this all over the world for influence as well as through espionage. And so in a way, they're just doing what's natural as a state. And I think in there, they factor in there the fact that there aren't really going to be many consequences from Canada. We don't have a policy on China. And we're not very effective at safeguarding our national security with respect to China. So they will do what they can get away with.
Do you think that will change going forward, given something like this, which does help to inform the public's level of awareness of what is going on?
I think it will, actually, because I think the perception now among Canadians is on the national security front with respect to China, we really have to raise our game. We've got an inquiry going forward. We're going to be, hopefully asking some tough questions and getting some answers there. And a process like this, where we finally get some redactions removed and we can actually see what went on. I think Canadians are obviously realizing the situation the country is in, and will be able to reinforce and strengthen, add to some national security laws, tweak a few things, and be in a stronger position.
What do you think it says that the government went as far as it did to try and block the release of these documents? And do you think these number of years later, they might take a different approach?
I like not to be cynical. And the idea of redactions is you're protecting national security. You're protecting methods and sources and stuff. And there's probably very little national security information there they wanted to cover. You certainly can't bring out the Five Eyes boogeyman here. This would be a domestic investigation. But I think it's just a reflex. You redact as much as you can and say it's too sensitive, go away. And I think there's been a realization in Ottawa the last year that the national security file hasn't been managed very well with Canadians. And they're just going to have to be more transparent sooner than later.
The ad hoc committee essentially is the one that came to the conclusion that Canadians should be able to see what's in there. They also talked about kind of the true reason of not releasing those documents, or the hesitance to do so, being the exposure of an embarrassment, kind of an embarrassing course of actions for the public health agency. Today, the minister was on the receiving end of a lot of questions about whether there would be consequences for the people who did not enforce the security protocols, it appears, that were in place. He said that there would not be, essentially, that no one was going to get fired. What do you take from that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think we still have to find out what was accessed. We have to find out, was anything accessed? Unauthorized access. There are laws in place for that. And I think we need to get Canadians' trust that departments are going to follow these standards and do their job. It does look like some department dropped the ball. And you can't just move that into national security land and say that it all has to be taken care of separately, because it's already out. The horse is out of the barn, and review. But there's directions, there's guidance. CSIS gives directions, they give advice. These two shouldn't have access, but it's up to the department to decide to act on it and how a department wants to manage it. It's ultimately it's their business.
And just finally, Mr. Stanton, I know we don't know the specifics of it right now, but what would China want in that? Like, how does it advantage China to get information from something like our top infectious disease lab?
I don't have the scientific background, Vassy, but I imagine that we might actually have some expertise in that particular niche area that they don't have. And so they will acquire that like they will acquire anything, basically through clandestine means or sneaky means. So there may be something there, some advanced research that Canada has done that's been sharing with some allies. I don't know. But it's certainly warranted a lot of attention from China.
It sure did. Mr. Stanton, I'll leave it on that note. Appreciate your analysis this evening very much. Thank you.
My pleasure, Vassy. Thank you.
Dan Stanton is a former executive manager at Canada's spy agency, CSIS.